217 seconds, 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Thomas Massie stood up, held a Treasury Department payroll audit above his head, and asked the question that would shatter every defense Stephen Miller had prepared. Mr. Miller, these payroll records show 340 employees receiving salaries from the DHS Border Operations Emergency Fund, full-time positions, benefits packages, $47 million in total compensation over 18 months. But according to Social Security Administration employment verification, not one of these people ever worked for the Department of Homeland Security. So I have a very simple question for you. Who are these 340 employees? Miller's face went completely blank. Not pale, not flushed blank, like someone had unplugged his brain mid-thought. His lead attorney grabbed his shoulder too hard. His second attorney was already standing. But the payroll audit was on every screen in the room, and Massie had not even started counting yet. If you are new here, subscribe right now, because what you are about to witness is the longest silence in congressional hearing history and the payroll records that caused it. House Oversight Committee, room 2154, Thursday morning, 10:41 a.m. Eastern. The hearing was listed as routine fiscal oversight of Department of Homeland Security emergency spending programs. Routine, that word appeared in the official notice, and it was completely wrong. Massie arrived 35 minutes early, carrying the same locked aluminum case from previous hearings. Security waved him through without scanning. They knew what was coming. Miller did not. Miller walked in with his standard formation. 3 attorneys, 2 senior policy advisors, that practice confidence he always carries. Shoulders back, briefcase positioned precisely. The I have testified 100 times posture. He sat down, adjusted his microphone twice, looked almost relaxed during the chairman's opening remarks. He had his defense strategy ready. He thought he knew every angle they could attack from. He was catastrophically wrong. The first hour was exactly what Miller expected. Questions about budget allocation timelines, emergency fund authorization protocols, standard procurement oversight. Miller gave polished answers, controlled, professional. He even smiled when a Republican committee member praised border security funding. He checked his water glass twice but never drank. A small tell. He was more nervous than he looked, but he thought he was managing it. He was comfortable, confident, completely unprepared for what Thomas Massie was about to do. Then Massie took the microphone and said 7 words that changed everything. Mr. Miller, let's discuss payroll disbursements. The room temperature seemed to drop. Not policy, not strategy. Payroll, the most basic, traceable, verifiable spending category that exists. Massie opened the aluminum case with a click that echoed. He pulled out a binder, Treasury Department seal embossed on the cover. He set it down with deliberate weight. This is a forensic payroll audit conducted by the Treasury Department Inspector General in conjunction with the Social Security Administration. It was completed 9 days ago. It examines every salary payment made from the DHS Border Operations Emergency Fund between January 2024 and June 2025. Every paycheck, every direct deposit, every tax withholding, all of it documented here. Massie opened to a flagged page. According to DHS payroll records, 340 individuals were employed full-time in border operations emergency response positions during this period. The funding came from the emergency operations account that requires expedited approval but limited oversight. He looked up. The 340 employees received an average annual salary of $78,000 plus benefits. Health insurance, retirement contributions, paid leave, total compensation over 18 months, $47 million. He pulled out a spreadsheet, held it to the document camera. The image filled the screens. Every name, every salary, every payment date, every bank routing number. This is the complete list, 340 names, 340 social security numbers, 340 direct deposit bank accounts, all receiving federal paychecks for border operations work. A murmur started in the gallery. Journalists leaning forward, committee members exchanging glances. Massie continued without pause. The Treasury IG cross referenced every social security number on this payroll list with the Social Security Administration's employment verification database. He paused. The SSA tracks every job, every employer, every paycheck that gets reported. If you work for the federal government, you are in this system. There are no exceptions. There are no delays. He pulled out a second document, thicker than the first, of the 340 people on the DHS payroll receiving salaries for border operations work. The SSA employment verification shows 0. Not one of them. was employed by the Department of Homeland Security during this period. The murmur became louder. A journalist in the third row dropped her phone. The clatter echoed. Several people jumped. Massie let the moment breathe. Let that number sit in the air. 340 employees, $47 million in salaries. 0 actual DHS employment records. He looked directly at Miller. But here is where it gets interesting. The IG did not stop at the database check. They went deeper. They pulled the individual employment records for each of the 340 names. He opened the binder to another section, pages marked with colored tabs. These people exist. They are not made up. Real Social Security numbers, real names, real addresses, real bank accounts receiving deposits every 2 weeks. But according to SSA records, during the exact period they were supposedly working for DHS border operations, here is where they were actually employed. Massie read from the list slowly. Deliberately, 67 of them were employed by private security contractors. 89 of them worked for construction companies. 52 were employed by logistics firms. 41 worked for consulting groups. 28 were listed as self-employed, and 63 had no reported employment at all during this period. He set the document down. Every single person on the DHS emergency payroll was simultaneously employed somewhere else or employed nowhere at all. Not one was actually working for the Department of Homeland Security. Now stop for a second. If you believe $47 million in payroll fraud deserves an explanation, share this everywhere. The people who authorized these payments thought no one would cross. Reference the databases. They thought the emergency designation meant no oversight. They were wrong. Every name, every payment, every bank account is now public record. Keep watching, because what Massie shows next proves this was not administrative error. This was systematic fraud. Miller's lead attorney tried to interrupt. Mr. Chairman, these allegations are based on database discrepancies that could easily be explained by administrative reporting delays or interagency coordination issues. I am going to stop you right there. Massie did not even look at the attorney. The IG report clearly states these are not database errors, because they did something else, something very revealing. He pulled out a new section of the audit. The IG selected 40 names from the list at random, stratified sample, geographically distributed, different salary levels. They conducted in-person interviews, face-to-face. They showed each person a copy of their DHS employment record, showed them the paychecks that had been deposited into their bank accounts, and they asked each person directly, have you ever worked for the Department of Homeland Security? Have you ever received a paycheck from DHS? Massie looked up. Of the 40 people interviewed, 38 said they had never worked for DHS, never applied to work for DHS, and had no idea their information was being used. He paused. They were shocked. Several thought it was identity theft. One contacted the police during the interview. 2 refused to be interviewed. Their attorneys cited Fifth Amendment protections against self-incrimination. Think about that. 2 people whose names appear on this payroll, when contacted by federal investigators, immediately hired criminal defense attorneys and invoked their right to remain silent. The room erupted, not gradually, instantly. Committee members talking over each other, journalists typing frantically, cameras repositioning. The chairman banged the gavel 4 times. The sound echoed like gunshots. Order, order in this chamber. Miller sat motionless, his hands flat on the table, knuckles white. That small muscle near his jaw starting to twitch. Involuntary stress response. Massie was not done. But here's the critical detail. The detail that connects this directly to you, Mr. Miller. He pulled out another document. Emergency payroll authorizations from the DHS border operations. Emergency fund require executive approval for any hiring that exceeds 50 positions or $5 million in annual salary commitment. This is a federal requirement, not a guideline, a requirement. He held up a form, zoomed in with the document camera. This is the authorization form for the 340 emergency positions. Filed the 8th of February, 2024 positions, justified as critical national security emergency response personnel. Budget authorization, $47 million over 18 months. He zoomed in further. At the bottom of this form, in the section marked executive authorization signature, there is a name, a handwritten signature, a date written in blue ink. He looked at Miller, your name, Mr. Miller, your signature, your handwritten date, the 8th of February, 2024. Complete silence. You could hear the HVAC system humming. You could hear someone breathing heavily 2 rows back. You could hear Miller swallowing. Massie set the document down carefully. So let me be very clear about what this audit reveals. You signed authorization for 340 emergency border operations positions. Those positions were filled according to DHS payroll records. Those employees received $47 million in federal salaries and benefits, but not one of those people actually worked for DHS when interviewed. 38 said they had no idea their names were being used. 2 invoked Fifth Amendment protections, and every single one was either employed somewhere else or had no employment at all during the period they were receiving DHS paychecks. He walked closer to the witness table. Not aggressive, just closer. So I am going to ask you directly, Mr. Miller, and I want you to understand that your answer will be part of the permanent congressional record. Who are these 340 employees? Where did their names come from? Who was actually doing the work they were supposedly hired to do? And where is the $47 million that was paid in their names? Who received that money? Where did it go after it left those 340 bank accounts? Miller opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it, opened it again. Still nothing. His attorney whispered something urgent, leaning close. Miller shook his head once, sharp number. And that is when the silence started. Massie looked at his watch, pulled out his phone, opened the stopwatch app, held it where everyone could see. The camera zoomed in on the phone screen. I am going to ask one more time, Mr. Miller, and I am going to time how long you sit here without answering. Who are these 340 employees, and where is the $47 million? He pressed start. The stopwatch began counting. 10 seconds. Miller's hands pressed harder against the table. 15 seconds. His lead attorney scribbling on the legal pad. 20 seconds. A congressman from Ohio, Republican, leaned into his microphone. Steve, just answer the question. This is straightforward. Miller looked at him, held eye contact for 2 seconds, then looked away. 30 seconds. The stenographer stopped typing. Just stared 45 seconds. Miller's face had gone from blank to gray. That ashen color that comes when blood drains. 60 seconds. 1 full minute. The chairman leaned forward. Mr. Miller, you are under oath. These are federal payroll records with your signature. These are real people whose identities were used. Answer the question. Miller's jaw moved. No sound. 75 seconds. His second attorney stood up. Mr. Chairman, we request a brief recess. Denied. The chairman did not hesitate. The witness will answer now. 90 seconds. Massie stood up, still holding the stopwatch, the phone screen visible on every monitor. Mr. Miller, we are now at 1 minute and 30 seconds. This is not a complex policy question. This is basic accountability, 340 names, $47 million. Your signature, who are they? 110 seconds. Miller's hands started trembling. He pressed them flatter. The cameras caught it. Everyone saw. 130 seconds. A journalist in the back stood up to get a better angle. Security motioned for him to sit. 150 seconds. 2.5 minutes. Massie walked directly in front of the witness table. Mr. Miller, we are approaching 3 minutes. 3 minutes of silence. Rather than explain who received $47 million in federal payroll that you authorized. 170 seconds. Miller's face was pale now, that jaw muscle twitching visibly. 190 seconds, his attorney tried to stand again. The chairman pointed at her. Sit down, counselor. Your client can speak for himself if he chooses to. 200 seconds. Massie stopped walking, stood completely still. Mr. Miller, I am going to count to 217. At 217 seconds, I am entering every page of this audit into the congressional record. Every name, every payment, every interview transcript. And your silence will be noted. 210, 215, 217. Massie pressed stop, held up the phone. 3 minutes and 37 seconds. He turned to the committee. Mr. Chairman, the witness has refused to answer. I move to enter the complete Treasury, e.g. payroll audit, all 1247 pages, into the congressional record. I further move to refer this matter to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation into wire fraud, false claims, identity theft, and embezzlement of federal funds. The motion was seconded immediately. The vote was called. It was unanimous. Massie gathered his documents. Mr. Miller, he said quietly, 217 seconds. That is how long you chose to sit in silence rather than explain where $47 million went or who these 340 people are. That silence tells me everything. It tells this committee everything. It tells the American people everything they need to know. The documents are public now, every name on that fraudulent payroll, every bank account that received deposits, every interview where real people said they never worked for DHS, every signature you put on authorization forms, all of it public permanent. And the FBI is very good at following payroll fraud. Very good at finding where money goes when it is stolen from federal accounts. The hearing ended. Not officially, but effectively. Miller's attorneys surrounded him immediately. Security had to clear a path through the cameras. Questions were being shouted from every direction, but none of it mattered because in 2:17 seconds, Thomas Massie had exposed what might be the largest payroll fraud in DHS history. 340 ghost employees, $47 million in stolen federal salaries, and Stephen Miller's signature on the authorization form, sitting in complete silence rather than explain any of it. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Massie 217 trending worldwide, cable news networks cutting to emergency coverage. Fraud investigators analyzing the payroll records, former federal prosecutors discussing RICO implications, and somewhere, 340 people whose names were used without permission were probably calling lawyers, and 2 people who invoked the Fifth Amendment were probably calling very expensive criminal defense attorneys. This is not speculation. This is a Treasury Department Inspector General audit. 1247 pages, 340 names cross. Referenced with Social Security Administration records, 40 in-person interviews, $47 million in documented payments, and 2:17 seconds where Stephen Miller could have explained it, but chose silence instead. 2:17 seconds. That is the new record, and every second of that silence is documented.